Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. A sheriff's deputy whose life was in imminent danger is being painted as the villain for giving his attacker ample time to stop his deadly assault. That is the real takeaway from a garbage headline like this coming from The Guardian. It reads, California officer shoots and kills boy, 15, holding gardening tool. Accompanying that headline is a sweet picture of the assailant. The image they want the public to draw from this is that a black kid was out gardening or something and some racist evil cop with a jumpy trigger finger shot him in a horrible mistake as the kid, the boy even as the headline stresses, sat there helplessly in his garden with his flowers and a hand shovel in his hand or something. When in actuality, here's what happened from 2 different body cameras worn by officers.
Where's he at?
He got a stick in his head, guys.
Hey, get back! Get back, you're getting shot!
The incident took place on Saturday in Apple Valley when the teenager, who was said to be autistic, began assaulting his own family members inside the home with various objects, even including glass shards at one point. The situation got so out of hand that officers obviously had to be called, which meant that the family felt that their lives were in danger, despite what's being said now in the media that the teen was not actively a threat to anyone. As you can see on the body camera, once the officers arrive, the teen rushes out of the house with a gigantic 5-foot-long bladed scythe-looking weapon, which is being called blandly a gardening tool, and attacked the officer with it. That officer gave him ample opportunity to stop. He yelled at the suspect to put down the weapon or he would get shot. The officer even did what you're not really supposed to do, just to give the teen more time to come to his senses and stop, which is that the officer began backing up and then running backward away from the suspect. Do you know how easy it would have been for the cop to trip while doing that? And in close quarters like that, the suspect with the long-bladed weapon does have the edge over the cop who'd be prone on the ground as he tumbled, regardless of whether or not he has a gun. I'm not sure, since the investigation is still active, whether the cop running backward fired the fatal shot or if it was the cop protecting his partner from across the yard, as we saw in the video for a split second at the end from the other body cam. Either way, it's a fully justified yet tragic shooting. And the department needs to back up these officers 100%, or else the memo will keep going out that cops are not allowed to protect themselves until they've actually been shot, or in this case, taking a scythe-like blade to the head. And even then, Ben Crump or Al Sharpton would be there in 2 seconds to lecture the cops on why they still didn't have the right to use lethal force. Cops are in a lose-lose scenario. If a family like this has had 15 years to get their son under control and can't, what makes them think that an officer can do so within seconds? We also just have to come to terms with the fact that there are a lot of evil people out there in the activist community who really think that the only good cop is a dead cop. And so it's not worth arguing with those leftist types or trying to appease them, because they'll never admit that a cop ever had a justified reason for acting as they did. And so those voices should just be drowned out and ignored. Simple as that. Joining us now to discuss is military defense attorney Davis Younts. Davis, thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening.
So what do you make of how this case is being sold to the public? If you Google it right now, all you see is headline after headline stressing and emphasizing the fact that this is a young man, autistic, and the big one here, they keep saying he just had a gardening tool. What's the big deal with a gardening tool?
Listen, obviously this is a horrifically tragic situation, but the problem is what the press is doing, what the media is doing in this situation is just irresponsible and dangerous. There is an ongoing narrative in the public and among the public that somehow police officers are dangerous and the enemy, and that's simply not true. These police officers, some of them I've represented as clients, go to work every day hoping they never have to pull a weapon, never have to use their weapons. They're not looking for these situations. They don't want to be in these situations. And unfortunately, this is casting someone in a bad light. And it's sad that what happened here is the journalists essentially made all of these assumptions. Some of the early articles were written without seeing the body cam footage. And they're basically saying, oh, wait until we see the body and audio footage, body cam and audio footage here. And then we get it and we see a very, very different story that's being told. Unfortunately, so many in the public will not ever watch this and understand why the officers made the decisions they did in a split second during this time frame. I mean, this is a scenario. They're going into a home where someone is acting violent, they have something they know in their hands. They know this suspect has something in their hands that could be used as a deadly weapon. They've been threatening to use it on their own family members. So this officer is walking to the scene with his weapon already drawn, knowing it's a dangerous situation, and they have a full-size, full-grown human being coming at them with this weapon. They're ignoring demands to stop. They're ignoring the call that you will be shot. And the police officer is doing something not even required by any rules for use of force, and not even safe, running away and trying to create distance to give more time and opportunity for this individual to stop. And they don't. And so most of the public will not see that, will not understand this narrative, and will not understand this police officer made a split-second decision in a very dangerous situation. And if it was him that fired the shot, he saved his own life. If it was his partner may very well have saved his life.
You know, that's the thing a lot of people just don't realize. I've noticed so many people who don't know anything about law enforcement. They have no understanding of the tactics, the training, anything that goes into it. They just shoot off from the hip. Oh, well, you know, if I was there, I would have done X, Y, Z. And they really don't understand that even from the get-go on a call like this, if you get a call about a domestic, that's usually one of the most dangerous calls. Many times departments will not allow just one cop to respond to a call about a domestic violence situation where, you know, family members are threatening each other. Oftentimes domestic means a romantic partnership, but in this, obviously, it meant this son attacking his family. But you can't just have one officer respond. You need at least two officers respond because it's dangerous. So they go into the situation knowing this is bad. This is not a good situation to be in. Then they're getting the calls. I'm sure dispatch is keeping them updated. You know that the kid is threatening the family with lots of different objects, including at one point I read glass shards from a broken window. Very dangerous, right? Well, then you walk up and you don't really know what to expect. There's the open door and you're trying to get them to come out. Next thing you know, there's someone rushing at you with a gigantic bladed weapon. And like I said, that first officer, and it was so important that you said that, they don't want to shoot to kill. They don't want to shoot at all point blank. That is, there are so many officers who actually go their entire career without ever having to fire their gun in a situation like this. And that's something that they pray for, that they never have to. People don't really recognize the fact that it takes a toll out of someone when you have to shoot, even to defend yourself, even if it's fully justified. No matter how justified, when the officer has to go on his leave during the investigation because that's just protocol, you know he's upset and he's praying and he's crying because he's found out that it's a 15-year-old who has autism. Do you think that makes anyone feel good, right? But that doesn't change the facts on the ground that he was being attacked. What's he supposed to do? Wait till he falls on his back? Has a scythe through the middle of his forehead? Is that when he's supposed to finally be allowed to make some kind of action? So that's what I don't like, when a lot of these armchair quarterbacks who watch from their cell phones and their laptops and their TVs, they want to just keep piling on the officers, and yet they're the ones who are never going to have to be in the situation. They're never going to have to put their lives on the line to defend others, in this case the family who's being threatened, and so they can just spout off at the hip. And like I said, there's so many videos you can see online even of body cam footage of officers crying after a shooting because they didn't want to. There are cops who nearly get themselves killed because they don't want to shoot, as we saw that guy in the video running backwards, nearly tripping because he did not want to shoot the attacker. Maybe he already knew as a teenager he did not want to pull the trigger. It wasn't until it was absolutely necessary. And so that's why I can't stand the Ben Crumps and the Al Sharptons of the world, because, you know, being in the military and having that background and defending those who've served in the military and those in law enforcement, that it takes a very special type of person to go above and beyond the call of duty, to want to go out and to run towards danger instead of away from it like the rest of us. And so when we keep attacking and undermining those who want to serve, we leave ourselves in really a world that we see today where criminals seem to run it all.
And so absolutely right. We see a retention and recruiting crisis in the military because military members are afraid if they use force in the wrong situation, even if it's justified in self-defense, then they will be subjected to persecution and prosecution over the decisions that they've made. We saw that in the withdrawal of Afghanistan. They were afraid, the Marines were afraid to fire on a suicide bomber and couldn't get clearance in time to do it to save lives because of the politics of this. And the same is true as law enforcement. Listen, we as a nation, as a people, have to understand law enforcement, police officers, they are not all perfect. They are fallible human beings. But the reality is these are individuals that are willing to wake up in the morning, put on a vest, take a weapon, and go out to protect innocence and to save lives. And they know when they do that, especially today, they are a target. and that anything could happen. They could be put in a very difficult, dangerous situation. They are willing to risk their lives, just like military members, to protect the innocent. And we continue to ostracize them and second guess everything they do in these adrenaline-filled, split-second decision-making things. And again, from what we see about this case, what we know now, it appears this officer went above and beyond to try to avoid this situation. And it was tragic, but there was no other choice. From what we know now, there was no other choice.
And a lot of people also don't recognize that this is San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, right? It's one of the biggest counties in the state, probably even in the nation. It's massive in terms of geography. There's a lot of land to cover, and same thing, recruitment and retention crisis. It's hitting law enforcement departments as well, so they don't have as many guys as they should have to cover such large stretches. It seems the local PD was also involved with this case, so I don't know if they came in as backup. Perhaps the deputies didn't have enough, guys on the ground. That's the one thing in that county. I know, I've been in the county a lot, that a lot of deputies are told basically whenever you're called out to something, don't expect backup. Backup's going to be a long time away for you because, again, they just don't have the manpower. The same county just a few months ago, actually, there was calls of an armed burglar, an armed robber who was attacking some convenience store clerk at a gas station, and there was no deputies in the area who could respond fast enough. And so the sergeant, this is not what a sergeant's job is necessarily about, but he had to go out and respond as if he's a deputy, as if he's just one of the guys that he's in charge of. He had to go respond, and he goes to the convenience store. Once he gets inside, what happens? The gunman shoots at him, and I believe he was shot in one or both legs. Thankfully, he was able to survive, but that just shows you how bad the situation is. So a lot of these deputies, when they wake up and they go out to calls, they know it's tough. Apple Valley, these areas, a lot of them are rough areas, or they're in or around other rough areas. And so there's just so many other factors. Working at a department, there's not a lot of backup. You had a sergeant who recently just got shot because there's not enough guys. Bad area. Like I said, there's so many factors. Most people don't know. They run through the headline, they go, ugh, what a jerk this cop is. The kid just had a gardening tool. Couldn't they just talk to him? Couldn't they send the social worker out? Imagine a social worker responding to this. The social worker would have been killed. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. David, I know we could rant about this all night, but we are out of time. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.